Awesome.
Hey, everybody, this is Liz from Augusta, and today we have another friend of ours from Augusta, and I'm going to let him share his name and where he's from, and then we will jump in. Go for it.
Yep. Hey, everybody. My name's Connor Stead. I'm here in Evansville, and I do know my location number. It's 67.
You go.
And yeah,
That's fantastic. So, today we want to share a little bit about yourself and what makes you the man you are, and then how you came to be with us at Augusta. So, can you share about your family and your upbringing a little bit?
yeah, I was actually thinking about that yesterday, telling my wife, I was like, what should I say? And, just trying to put our family together. So I'm one of many. I'm the only boy of the family, and the
Wow.
rest are sisters from what my parents had. So I've got two older sisters. I've got a younger sister, and then throughout the years, my mom and dad kind of adopted somebody at 15. He and I went to high
Nice.
school together. His mom went to jail. His dad passed away, so we kind of helped out. It was through the church. We did that. Then they also did like foreign exchange students. So we always say that we have like two foreign sisters. We had one that went to Paris and one that came from Milan, Italy. And so we just always had like a whole list and heap of people just coming in and out the doors in terms of family. And yeah, we were just really big on family in general, the family unit.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So, what was the demographic between you and this young man? Like the way you got along and everything, because especially because you were so close in age. Did you get along?
Yeah, we were a month apart. We got along for the most part. There wasn't any really major arguments through us. It was just the difference of my parents respectfully had all their stuff together is how I feel. And then he kind
Yep.
of came from a broken home. So that was really just the way they think, the way they thought, the way that they spent money. They were just always like they got something and it was gone because like they never knew what was gonna come next. So they didn't really think very much into the future. And we were very much like, hey, what are we gonna do now to help us out later type people. So that was always tough. And then they didn't have the structure for school. And my parents, that was really tough. My parents were very structured. And so they kind of had to set some more rules for us
Hmm.
because they couldn't necessarily be lax with us and then harsh on him. So they kind of had to
Right.
be fair and to everybody. So that was interesting because we kind of like reverted back to where we were like 5 years ago, but it is what it is.
So he actually helped you kids.
Yeah, they weren't as hard because we could pretty much ace it because we had already been doing what they were teaching him, but they almost kind of had to like start over. Like, here's the house rules. Here's what you don't do. Here's what you don't say. You come to church. If you don't do your homework, you don't get to go do extracurricular. My parents always did like a homework check on Friday, mainly my dad. And if our
Wow.
grades weren't good on Friday, we couldn't go out with our friends. So
Wow. So him being in your family, did they adopt him, number one? And
mhm.
secondly, did he stay involved with his family? Like, did you have to constantly work with them?
So my parents did what was called kinship.
Hmm.
So it's essentially adoption without him losing his state benefits. And
Okay.
so like we didn't get paid for it, but he still got like health insurance through the state, or he got like free lunch through the school. So like he got some of the small benefits, but like my parents weren't getting paid for it, so they paid for the housing, they paid for his clothing. Like he got like $100 a year clothing allowance. Like that does nothing.
Nothing. Yes.
So they usually used it for like a backpack and some shoes at the beginning of the year, but they never counted on it, and that wasn't the whole point. Um, he was somewhat involved in his family. I'd say like maybe once a quarter or so we'd see everybody, but I mean that's kind of why we were hosting him because all his family was old enough, but they weren't stable enough to house him
Right.
or
Right.
wanted to.
Hmm. Yeah, I'd love to hear a little more about him as he grew up and where he is today, and what he would say about you guys and how you benefit his life. Has he been successful?
We actually haven't seen him. I've probably only seen him twice, and since we graduated high school, so about 7 years ago, he
Wow.
really kind of once he hit 18, he matured out the system and kind of did his own thing. He stayed in contact with my parents quite a bit for a while, but then it was just like superficial, I guess, after a while.
I see. I see.
And
So
so,
so your family sounds very caring, structured, and involved with one another. Family must be very important to you.
oh yeah, I mean, like during COVID, I mean, like my sister lived out in Colorado. Her state pretty much shut down everything, and Indiana really didn't. And so, like my sister and her family stayed out here for like 6 weeks because they were like, well, if we're going to be stuck inside, at least we ought to be stuck inside with you guys
For
type
sure.
thing. So they stayed at my parents and we were always going back and forth. And my parents are really big on like family vacation. So we sometimes even have like aunts, uncles, and everybody else come on some of those trips too. And so like even some of my friends in college, whenever we were in between break, like you had to go home for certain breaks. They were like, hey, do you mind if we stay at your house? I'm like, sure. My parents don't mind. I mean, they've got like 2 or 3 extra bedrooms, might as well, because my older siblings had moved out.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I had probably a dozen friends that stayed with us for probably longer than 2 weeks at a time. Some stayed for the whole summer.
How has that helped you in business? It sounds like you're really good with relationships, really good with people. And has that been a way, that a filter that you've pulled everything through with business? How has that affected you?
Well, my brother-in-law, Tyler, and my mom, they always say that I could talk to anybody and everybody. Like the person next to you on the plane, I could probably figure out where they went to high school, when they got married, what their
Wow.
daughter, what their children's names were and everything else. So just connecting with people and asking like, not like superficial, but like kind of specific questions.
For
Like,
sure.
hey, what do you actually do? What does that mean? And stuff like that. And college, I mean, it was just, you just have to connect with people, and it may make you uncomfortable, but you have to get them involved. I was vice president for our Christian organization out on our campus. And I was in charge of doing all of the events. And so like I had to
Wow.
go up and I had to say what we were doing. And I was kind of like, I was on the mic quite a bit compared to some of the others, and
Mm-hmm.
like just training people, hey, like you just say whatever you think, act goofy. I mean, it's just college. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
people that your age, and just have a good time and just speak about it from there.
So you went to
So,
college. What did you go to college for?
so I went to college for finance and Spanish, and so I had like 2 classes left until I graduated with my Spanish degree, and I don't know. I was so close, but yet so far how I felt as well. And I couldn't do it. I'm pretty sure that teacher ended up getting fired just because of how poor their reviews were. So I mean,
Wow.
I don't want to say I didn't try, but at the same time, they definitely made it very difficult for us.
Yes.
And then I went for finance, which is like stocks, investments, portfolio management, like a certified planner, and stuff like that. My dad really wanted me to go, so that's what I went. That's why I
Excellent.
went.
Well, I'll come back to that because I think that's going to make a big difference in your journey. So, how did you first hear about Augusta?
So probably like most people, social media. I mean, Mike's business podcast. I had watched Tigran, and so in
Mm-hmm.
late 2020, early 2021, Mike kind of called out Tigran on a YouTube video about how he wasn't making money, and
Mm-hmm.
then they had their interview. And I think I'd seen Mike from time to time here and there. Like I'd
Mm-hmm.
heard of the podcast, but I'd never really listened to it. And like he also did an interview with Brian Shane from Top Notch Lawn Care, which that's like
Mm-hmm.
5 years ago. So that one was quite a while ago. And so I'd heard of him. I just thought he was just somebody else that was on YouTube there for a while until I started getting
Mm-hmm.
into like his business podcast. And then I was like, wow. And then like, I think I probably listened to him for like 2 weeks. And then I bought the lawn care business course,
Mm-hmm.
tried to do some iteration just like everybody else of like profit sharing and have some sort of structure, of course, but like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel, and Mike's just like, hey, I'm making the wheel simpler.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so trying to recreate whatever he's doing just adds complexities, and then it's hard to follow through. And it's just, if I'm not organized, that's not going to work.
Yeah. And landscape business course, can you tell our listeners a little bit about how it's structured?
Yeah. So to be fair, I haven't finished it. I was
Right,
just like, oh no, and started listening to Mike.
because
Yeah.
he keeps adding to it,
Yeah,
correct?
he keeps adding
Okay.
to it. So Mike has tons of courses over like how to manage your business for systems, how to manage your businesses in terms of profits, how to hire and fire, how to learn KPIs like key performing indicators, like what really moves the business. Like you've got close ratio, you've got how many customers you actually kept, so retention. You've got things like how like net versus gross profits, and then you've got like newer content would be like capacity growth versus labor growth, asset growth. Like, can you actually grow your business? Should you grow your business? Mike's big on mental capacity, so he talks a lot
Mm-hmm.
about like is this really the right decision for you? Can you mentally handle this? The financial stress, the roadmaps, the wilderness of different stages of business, 0 to 1 million, and all sorts of, and also talks quite a bit about like what he would not do and what he totally recommends
Hmm.
you should do. And it's not his business, but he definitely wants you to learn from his mistakes. And so he offers quite a bit of content for honestly free to a very little price.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing that. I remember the very beginning of that and our very primitive. He was very young and he hired a company to come in and help film. And after
Mhm.
2 or 3 days, he just dismissed them
Yeah.
because it was just way easier for him to get in front of a camera in our little tiny office and start sharing 0 to 300,000 or whatever that was in the beginning that he was
Yep.
sharing for his first 3 years of business. He thought, I did it, I documented it, I'm just going to start sharing it. And it was
Mhm.
very humble in the beginning, I remember.
Yeah, and I think the reason I was drawn to listening to more of Mike's content after some of that stuff is because I was in that 0 to 300 or that 200 to 500 stage at that time, and I
Hmm.
was just like, "There's got to be something new to this." I graduated college in 2020,
Hmm.
so I was able to have a spring rush because usually I had to deal with college because usually it's
Hmm.
May by the time we're done with school. So they canceled like the first or second week of March. So I was like, okay, great. Well, I can just work full time and this will be great. And then I hired some people because they lost their jobs. So I was like, great, labor's really easy to find right now. And then it was just like, but then it came down to, well, we are this size, the management that I needed to acquire to be able to do that, or the organization of it was just like all over the place. So I just needed
Hmm.
something to start providing some of that structure.
How did you even get into lawn care?
So I think you'll like this one. So I was the neighborhood kid. So I started whenever I was like 10 years old, 10 or 11 years old. I know the first year I wanted to buy my brother-in-law, he got a MacBook computer. I was
Hmm.
like, oh, I want one of those. Well, he got a new job and they gave him one. So his was like, a year or two old. And I was like, hey, if I gave you, and I was just like, just think of a number that's hard for me, right? Not for him.
Yeah.
I was like, if I give you $500,
Oh, my word.
can I have that computer? And he said, absolutely. And
Wow.
so him and my sister, they live out in Colorado. They actually live out by Thomas and Littleton,
Okay.
and they were coming home for the summer. And I was like, hey, if I have that money by the time you come here for the summer, will you bring that computer and I'll buy it from you? And I did. And I remember sending him pictures every week of all the money that I had earned. And I'd be like, hey, T, extra $100 here this week. I'm coming for your computer and just
That's
stuff
so
like that.
cool.
And the only reason I wanted his computer is because my parents said that they wouldn't get me one. So I was a spiteful, I don't know, 12-year-old, right, at the time. And I said, well, if I buy this computer, that means you can't take it away from me because I bought it with my own money. And my dad, once I got it and
Wow.
I got in trouble the first time, he said, well, I don't have to let you charge it because the electricity is mine. And I was like,
Oh, my word.
I did not think that far. So I got it because my parents were fair, but at the time I thought it was really tough on
No
me.
kidding.
But looking back, it brought me to where I am, something so small.
Yeah. So this computer, it must have been a big thing for your business. It helped you with the lawn care business.
Well, at the time, I just wanted a Mac because that's just kind of like Apple. It was just the
Right.
thing. They're a cool computer, and it did end up helping me with my business. I used it for my business, and it went out on me my freshman year of college. So I was able to use it for about 5 years before I had any issues with it.
So since you lived at home with your family, you're going to
Mhm.
school, you are mowing lawns, were you saving all that money or did you need to help with the family expenses?
No, a good portion of it I was able to save, or I just bought the equipment in cash. So I wasn't able. I didn't really need to invest a lot of it in like the family bills or anything like that. I mean, like I would, my dad's like, once I turned 18, he's like, hey, you're using the truck for business. It's my truck, but like you should probably pay for the insurance. And I'm just like, I was dreading for that day to come. And I was like, but I knew
Yeah.
it was going to come. So no, I would buy the equipment. All the equipment was paid for in cash over the time. So that's just really where most of it went, was just buying equipment and then doing what I needed to do.
Okay. So did you continue with lawn care throughout college?
I
And
did. I did do lawn care throughout college. So whenever I finished in high school, I think I did like 65,000 that year
fantastic.
in high school. and living at home, still using my dad's truck, even though I had to pay for the insurance and the gas.
Mm-hmm.
And we split like repairs 50-50. And so, and I had a car that I would use to go to college or go to classes. And so I would do my classes like 2 days a week. And then whatever did not fit in a 2 day a week schedule, I did it online. Even if the class sucked, I did it online. And I was like, I just have to be able to have time to do my lawn care business, because the first semester I did classes to like 2 or 3, because the guy's like, oh yeah, you want a long lunch because it's a long day. And he's like, you don't want to start classes to like 9, 10 o'clock. And I was just like, okay, cool, whatever. I was just listening to the advisor. And then I get home, it's like 3:30. I'm like, I have no time. And it was a fall semester. So of course, like I'm losing a minute and a half every single day. And
Yeah.
so it was just like a mess. And so that next semester, I think I took like a 7, 8, and a 9 a.m. So I was home by like 10. I was like, I have, 7 hours to at least
Sweet.
go do something. And that's just what I did. And I think by the time we were out of college, I had hit that 220,000 mark. And so I was
Fantastic.
just slowly growing the business through college. And I had my uncle help me 2 days a week and just say like, hey, look, the days I'm in class, I just really need your help. And so we did Tuesday through Friday. We didn't mow on Mondays because that was the day that I would do maintenance. Since I was in school, I kind of
Mm,
had to do something. And then my parents
right.
were super involved. Me and my dad always did church related stuff on Saturdays or Sundays. And so like, yeah, my mom always said burning the candle at both ends, but I feel like sometimes that's the only way you can live.
100%. I agree with that 100%. So I better ask you right here. Do you believe in balance?
um, I believe in giving specific time if that's what they request. But a lot of times in the spring, like I had to tell my wife or my family, my now wife, my family then, like, this is just what I have to do to get it done. Or that's just, my parents can respect the hard work. Like they didn't necessarily care if I didn't go to church because they knew that I wasn't doing, like shenanigans. They knew that I
Right.
was working hard and that I still made church a priority. I still tithed. I still did whatever I needed to do during that
Hmm.
time. They just There were some times when my mom sat me down, she's like, "You're gonna eat dinner with us," because she's like, she knew like a million miles a minute my mind was going, and it was just like,
Totally.
she's like, "You're gonna calm down for a minute, put
Yeah.
your phone away, put it on the charger,
Yeah.
just sit with us and eat," because I hadn't eaten all day or something crazy, right? I'm
Yeah,
just,
for sure.
yeah, neck deep.
Yeah, I understand that. Man, that's commendable. I love it. So, when did you start being interested in the franchise? Because you said you're what, number 66, you said?
67.
67. So, that means the franchise would have been started, and had you been watching how it was going, all the talk about it throughout that time?
Yeah, I had watched in 2021. Mike started coming out with those zero turn episodes where he
Mhm.
was like you, Brian Connor. He had a call with Lee, and then he had some with like Eco Mo Friendly, which is now Vlad, and
Mhm.
some other people throughout time that he had
Mhm.
interviews
Mhm.
with. And so I was just like, man, that's always interesting. And then it's just like,
Yeah,
man, everybody has the same issues. They may not have it as deep because they can handle different things better, but in an area where I'm good, they may suck, or vice versa.
100%.
And
Yep.
it's just like, man, why am I not listening to this more often? So I was listening to, and at that time, I think Mike was posting every day.
Mhm.
So I was listening to Mike's stuff every day whenever I was getting ready, whenever any chance that I could, I was listening to whatever I could. And then I think I was interested in it briefly, but then he
Mhm.
made that video. Hey, when you hit number 50, we're going to be raising prices. If you want to join by the end of the year, you have to essentially buy now.
Mhm.
And I was just like, shoot, I really need to consider this, because if he's going to be raising prices, then that's really not good.
Yeah.
I need to get into it sooner rather than later if that's the case. And so I
Mhm.
started doing that, looking into it. Um, Probably shame on me. I was listening to some of the videos on my honeymoon and some of the other stuff whenever we're getting ready, like in the morning. I wasn't really
I
doing it
know.
in place of her, but I was just like, shoot. And then on like day one of our honeymoon, we went to Gulf Shores, Alabama. It's about 8 hours from us. Day one, about 3 o'clock, one of my guys calls me and they get in a wreck.
Oh no.
And the truck ends up being totaled. So I'm dealing with insurance and all that on our honeymoon. And just like, I was like, there's got to be a better way that I can go about this, because I really wanted them to use the other truck that whole week that I was gone. But just leading up to the wedding, I just got busier and busier and busier and busier. And then actually,
Yeah.
my sister was on a ventilator during that time
Oh
for
my word.
COVID related. So I'm just like, there was just a lot going on like that month before the wedding. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, if I would have given them the other truck, like I said that I was supposed to, I don't think that this, you know, like just if I would have just
Yeah.
done what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, I know that guy, Josh, he gives me a hard time all the time. Whenever he sees a nice truck, he's like, man, that could have been your truck. I'm like, look, you were honest with me. It is what it is. Insurance paid us out for it. But at the same time, if he hadn't have done that, I don't think I would have been like, okay, yep, I've got to have some sort of organization. And so
So
I've watched,
it was a disaster that made you come to the final decision.
I think that pushed me over the edge. Yes.
Yeah.
I think I was
Yeah.
already considering it and I had seen that video. And that's when I started looking into it really hard. That's whenever
Yeah.
I went and met you, Mike, and Lee down at the GIE. Because my
Yep.
wife's like, you just need to make sure that they're real, make sure it's not a scam. And I'm just like, I mean, their presence is on social media. I don't think that it's a scam. They've been here for 4 or 5 years. And she's like, yeah, I know, but it would just make me feel better if you just went and met them. And so once I told you that, you're like, okay, yep, let's get a picture together. Mike, let's get a picture. And you're just like, okay, let's make sure your wife knows everything that she needs to know. And let's just go.
Yeah, and you're in Evansville, Indiana, so you were
Yep.
not far from Louisville, Kentucky, where the GIE happened that year.
Yeah, an hour and a half. I actually did, my buddy, he was going to take his girlfriend and she was a nurse and she ended up having to work last minute. And so I actually took her pass. And so my pass has
Cheater.
her name Madison on it.
How
and so
cool is
Lee
that?
was like, your name badge says Madison, but I don't think that you're Madison. He's like, I know we've talked before. And so I kind of went incognito, I guess.
So did you have your original call with Mike or Lee?
Mine was with Lee.
Okay, so he was already doing that at that time. And so when you joined the franchise, did you come up for training right away and get started, or was there a space of time in there?
No, there was a space of time because I think that's whenever you guys were starting to learn that you needed to space off
Yep.
when Augusta learned that they needed to space off trainings.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went with the big group in December. There was like 20, 25 of us that had went. And that was like the after 50
Yes.
franchisees, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think at that time it was the biggest group that they had ever that, you know, Mike, you and Lee had ever done at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So I paid in like I had my GIE is what, middle of October. So I had
Mm-hmm.
a
It's
call before
October.
GIE. Yeah, I had a call before GIE. I had a call after GIE just to let Lee, hey, here's my thoughts. Here's what I've thought about. And then I think I paid like, I don't know, first or second week of November after they had sent the invoice. So before Thanksgiving. And then I
Mm-hmm.
went to training December 3rd. So I mean, like it was just like boom, boom, boom. And
So let's go back to your education. So you learned about finance, you learned about numbers, you knew about business. Why would you think you would need Augusta? You're smart, obviously.
hmm.
And so, what element were you thinking that you would be missing if you didn't join?
So Mike talks a lot about everybody can potentially do it, right? Like
Hmm.
they don't necessarily need him. It's just
Exactly.
I had spent 4 years in college. I didn't want to go. I shouldn't say that because I met my wife there and some of my best friends in my wedding. Like almost everybody I met was I went to college with
Cool.
and things like that. So like I remember at high school, I didn't necessarily want to go. I had signed up for an internship before college. I didn't get the internship, and my dad's like, why don't you just go? He's like, we'll pay for it. We want you to just have something because maybe the bank will take you
Hmm.
more seriously later. Or if you don't, at least you have a fallback. That was their thing. At least you have something to fall back on.
Right.
And so I just remember just turning my gears. Yeah, college was super helpful in terms of, I think, understanding the information,
Hmm.
but sometimes they don't really help you implement the information. They don't necessarily give you the why. And so after just a couple of years of just trying to understand the why, I was like, I just needed something more and better. And so that's really what I was looking for. I think like I said, it helps you with critical thinking. I don't think it necessarily helps you with execution.
Mm.
College, that is.
Oh yeah, yeah, great explanation. So then when you started the franchise, where were you at revenue wise and employee wise?
Yeah. So our taxes say that we were around that 272 mark.
Mhm.
before that year before we had joined. So in 2021, when I signed the papers, and then we were official January 1 of that next year
Mhm.
on terms of like changing the business over and
Mhm.
not having like a harsh. So that was our start date of whenever we were joining Augusta, and that was also tough. I had to make that video, and I was just like, man, there's just a lot of structure. They want you to do a brand transition, and
Yep.
so I had to spend 2 or 3 months, which you think is a lot of time, but it's not. I had to, which Lee did not recommend, but I sold pretty much everything that did not fit the Augusta motto. I had 61s, I had 36s.
Oh my word.
I had an Isuzu, like some of the guys, which now I know that some of the guys do have. So I probably could have kept it,
No
but I was
kidding.
just like, I bought all new trucks. I mean, they were used, but I bought all new to me trucks, anything that, and so I could put ramp racks on them. So I bought 2 ramp racks, and then I did that. And then 52s, I had traded my 61 for a 52 so that it could fit in the ramp rack. And then I
Mhm.
bought all push mowers. And then I was like, I had brought 2 guys into the business with me from the previous brand, and we kind of did a vote on, am I going to join this or not? And they were like, yeah, let's do this. And I remember they're like, why are you selling the 36? I don't want to push mow. I was like, well, this 36 is 8 grand. I'm either going to spend it and you won't get the profit sharing with it, or I can spend some of this 8 grand on you. And they were just like, okay, yeah, we'll
No
take the eight
brainer.
grand. Yeah, we'll take the 8 grand our way. And
Yeah.
so once I started explaining it like that, like, I mean, I don't know if you ever listen to Dave Ramsey whenever he's like
Mhm.
beans and rice. He's like, you need to get rid of stuff so much that the kids or the dogs think they're next. And like my employees probably literally thought that they were next. I was getting rid of anything and everything that we hadn't touched in the last 3 or 6 months or something that doesn't work. I don't care if we can sell it. Just if you want to sell it, you can have it, you can keep it, but we're getting rid of this.
That is great. So you took
So
all the revenue from selling it and put it back in the business to buy more equipment.
yeah, so like I had sold a 36-inch zero turn
Mhm.
for 4 grand. I bought a truck for 3,400.
Got it.
So yeah, everything was just kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. It was just one interaction, a
Mhm.
transaction to pay for another transaction.
So once you came for training, I'm sure that was really overwhelming. We're still growing and getting better at our training and all of that. Did you feel overwhelmed by the end of that to get started?
I remember sharing with my parents. I guess this is kind of me backtracking a little bit. So my it wasn't necessarily overwhelming. I think it was exactly what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I had tried to join my parent, we talked earlier, my family and I are really close. So I talked to my parents about joining, and they were just like, we sent you to college. We see that you have this business mindset. I don't think that you should necessarily join. And so
Right.
that was kind of my first, but I was like, I'm married now. I feel it in my soul that this is what I'm supposed to do. I had talked to my wife about it, and she wasn't saying I should disobey my parents. She was just like, you should do what you need to do. And I just really struggled with it because my parents and I are super close,
No
and
kidding.
just like not having I didn't not have their blessing. They just thought I should wait.
Right.
And, people don't know what's mentally going through your head and why I didn't want to wait and do this for another year, at least doing it on my own. Right.
Right.
And so we joined Augusta. Me and my wife went to training, which I think was super good. Reminded me of like
Definitely.
the Ray Kroc founder movie. Like
Right.
he wanted family oriented people to be running his businesses. So I
Hmm.
thought that was super great. That Lee's like, yeah, go ahead and bring your wife. I was like, really? I didn't even think about that. He's like, yeah, bring your wife. So she took off work. I sent the guys a list of what we were going to do. We went to training. And I told my dad, I said, I honestly think my 4 years of college are what I learned in 4 days at Augusta.
Incredible.
Like my last
Yeah.
2 years, which are your
Yeah.
main capstone classes. I was like, I honestly think that is everything summarized. But at the same time, my dad challenged me. He said, but I don't think you may have been able to understand it at the level you were at without it, because my dad's an exec at the place he works for. So I had a good foothold of what I should understand.
Hmm.
However, he challenged me. He said, it was also good for your understanding of what's going on as well.
Did you agree with that?
To a point, like I said, right? I
How old were
definitely
you?
think so. At the time I joined, I was 23.
23. And that
Yep.
was how long ago?
Yeah, about a year and a half ago.
Okay. So how do your parents feel about everything now?
Yeah. So in October, I was talking to my mom, of this, so about 7 months ago, about how
Mhm.
much better I feel, and she was just like, 100%. I think this was the best decision you could have ever done for yourself.
Wow.
And so from going, because they had a lot of faith in their kid, like that's who they
For
wanted.
sure.
So it wasn't that they didn't have faith in my decision makings to join Augusta. They just wanted me to do what was best for me at the end of the day, and they didn't want
Mhm.
some corporate overlord or you know what I
Totally.
mean?
Yeah.
And so it was just mama bear being really restrictive on that. And she said that like mentally she feels like I'm brighter. She doesn't feel like I'm checked out. She doesn't feel like I'm like stressed. And because whenever I had it done, and I'd gained quite a bit of weight, and just like not knowing how to handle some of the stress with the business and
Mhm.
just everything else. So just like mentally, just 100%, 180 or maybe 150. I'm working on the 180
Yeah.
on trying to get there. And so like, but my dad, like, he thinks that it's great. The call center, I'd been telling my dad during COVID, like, you couldn't get a contractor to come out. You couldn't get
Mhm.
anybody to answer the dang phone. I was like, Dad, you know what? I would literally double my business if I would just answer that dang phone. And he's like, I bet you would. And so like with Command Center being able to have like a
Mhm.
shared office throughout the other franchisees is just amazing, and just like the top notch thing of having to do it. I was struggling answering the phone, trying, at that stage of business, I'm trying to be in the field, trying to answer the
Totally.
phone. You
Mhm.
can't take off a weekend because people are calling you at 9, 10 o'clock at night because they have a lawn care emergency, which apparently exists to them. And it's just
Yeah.
like you're
And
you're just
your whole next week depends on you answering that phone, having
right,
enough business next
right,
week. Yeah,
right.
so yeah, I'm glad that command is available to everyone and that it's getting a little bit better all the time. So
I
your
probably came
team.
in on a good side.
Yeah, good, good, good. I mean, and you're still early in the game. If our goal is 1,000 and you and
Yeah.
I were 67, I would say you're still on the ground level with us, learning and growing and changing. And we love the feedback that we get from everyone.
Yeah, I
So
love being
you're,
able to tell people to just call the office. I don't know
isn't that
what.
a great feeling?
Yeah, I'm not in charge of that. Just please call the office. It's more so just like you don't have time to deal with the situation right now, and I know Command Center can probably handle it a lot better than I can in that moment.
Yeah. So you've been in here 2 years, right?
Yeah, this is
Part of
my
the
second
franchise.
spring rush with
Second
Augusta.
spring rush. That's what I was going to ask next. Like, how many spring rushes have you had? And so, what's your mentality going into the second year?
So my mentality this year was probably what it was last year. It's just now I've learned quite a bit more because last year
Okay.
I had to reset. And so
Hmm.
this year we're hoping to like, are you thinking like talking like goal wise, or are you thinking just like mental mindset?
Yeah. So, you would view a spring rush in a certain way. You experienced your first one and you
Yep.
learn a lot from that one, and you're thinking of going into the next one. So, you could be super excited that you're
Mhm.
going to get to try this again and try different tactics and techniques, or you could be really nervous. I would think that you'd be a little bit excited about seeing how you do a second time around.
Well, that's very true. I am very excited because knowing how much I need to spend in marketing, knowing that the brand power of like the Augusta website and Google,
Hmm.
so probably just knowing what that yield will be in terms of client acquisition is definitely beneficial. Because beforehand, if I spent $100 on Facebook, I'm like, oh great, I hope this gives me a customer, and like, but like you just never know what that's actually gonna
Exactly.
gonna do. So I think having some metrics and some idea of what it's gonna gain is super super helpful. It takes a weight off the shoulder because it's like, is the work gonna come in? So like,
Hmm.
my mindset right now is I'm on both sides of the coin. I'm like, well, what if we don't have enough work? And my employees like, well, I think we're gonna have too much work. And I'm like, you're probably right, but just that I've never been at this stage of business. We eclipsed a goal last year, and so this year it's just like we're on track to hit that $500,000-600,000 mark, and I'm just like, this is I've never been in this territory, so I'm just
Hmm.
not I'm fretting it. I guess I'm 100% fretting it.
So last year, what was your goal and what did you reach?
So last year, my goal was to hit that 500,000, six hundred
Hmm.
thousand mark, and I got humbled very quickly. Not from anybody else, but just reality. Um, we had a truck engine blow up early in the year. We couldn't necessarily do that.
Hmm.
I had an employee quit at the beginning of May because he didn't like that we were getting paid every 2 weeks, essentially.
Oh
Um,
no.
and just some communication errors on my end to everybody else, and just like trying to figure out the systems. And we still weren't profitable. I mean, we would profit like $100 or, maybe $1,000. So nothing to write home about at
Mm-hmm.
that time. Right. And just, I think around after that one guy quit, as much as I liked him, I just think that it was probably the best thing. Cause then I had to go back in the field,
Mm-hmm.
which no big deal at that time. I had to at least do it a couple days a week or do estimates later on throughout the day. I had to do that. And then I really think that that helped me find a pulse of
For
what
sure.
the business. It turns out he wasn't training as well. So
Mm-hmm.
then we kind of had to retrain. And then some of the other newer employees kind of had some bad habits. So we kind of had to fix that. And then just I had to restructure. And so basically June, July, August timeframe, we really start to get the systems. But at that time, the damage had already been kind of done. So we had
Mm-hmm.
lost some customers. So I had to let one guy go, and then I had to go back in the field. I think I went like, they say a working GM, couple days a week, but like
Mm-hmm.
I would go every day. I went every day for like a month just to get us caught up on some initial mows or some projects, or because at that time, like we hadn't necessarily been 100% profitable. And so I'm just like, Mike's like, you just need money now. So I would just go out and get the money now and just, hey, can you write me a check? I'll send you an invoice whenever I get back. And so like the $600 project here, or you charge the initial mow that day because it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
viewed as a project. Or and so I just remember working till 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night for like a month. And I had one employee, he would work till like 3 o'clock and his list wouldn't be done. I was like, there's no point if I'm going to work this late for you to have such a
No kidding.
easy route.
Yeah.
And I was like, so we're going to be splitting up this. And so then I understood budgeted hours, how to
Mm-hmm.
project. And so like it really took me a while. And then like September, October, we had like a $10,000 profit. So like once I really started to hammer it down, we really started getting it. And so that was on like 32,000. We did like a $10,000 profit. So about a third.
Fantastic. So did you end the year at what, 300, 400?
Yeah, we ended the year on a cash basis of around 307 and accrual
Fantastic.
around that 330, 340 mark.
Mm-hmm. Did you
Because
lose all your team and start over basically from the time you joined the franchise? You know, those two guys that said, yeah, we
right,
should join, are they gone now?
one is gone, and one once he started to see some P for P paychecks come through, and
Yep.
once he really started to see that like, hey, there's something beyond even Connor, that I could do this either later on my own, or I could have an estimator or a GM, or he just didn't see a next 2 years in another company.
Mm-hmm.
So because then he also came to conference with us, and he was like, man, I may know some of this, but not to this detail.
Right.
And so I
Right.
think that really shifted his mind as well. And I've been trying to say all along the whole year, hey, this is what I learned at conferences. But they're just like, you just learned this out somewhere else, right? And
Yeah.
so I think whenever some people get immersed into it, like I did, they're just like, yep, let's go. And so once he saw that, it was a game changer for him too, I think.
Awesome. That's great. So moving on to this season, what kind of marketing are you using for this year?
So this year we're doing the door hangers. We're doing 5 rounds every time that
Okay.
we can go, and sometimes even on rainy days, we've gone out and passed out some door hangers, and then we're also doing quite a bit in Google. So
Excellent.
we're doing a couple $1,000s a month in Google. I think I'm spending like $10,000 or $12,000 in March, April, and May during the client, the demand and the supply.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm spending about 50 to 60% of my marketing in just those 3 months alone. And we're hoping to onboard, 100 to 200 clients. It really just depends on that revenue mark, which we want to hit
For
that
sure.
that 500, 600. So if we have about 100 clients now, in theory, we have to at least double that.
Mm-hmm.
So if we hit
Well,
about two, go ahead.
no, that's super exciting. I love it. I
Yeah.
love this projection. How about your goal overall? So this year you're going to try to hit 5 to 600,000, and then are you planning to just after that? Are you planning to kind of plateau and just bring revenue in and not grow so much, or are your goals for this location much more?
So I think they're much more at the same time. As much as I don't think I would mind being 200, 300, potentially in slow or 2 to 3 days a week, like the working GM.
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 or 3 days a week doing the estimates and plateauing around that 800,000 mark and being full-time estimate. But I
Mm-hmm.
know Zach, one of the employees that stayed with me, I know he has ambitions and goals. So I think I'm gonna have to grow it in order for him
For
to
him.
stay interested. And I know Lee said, kind of like what you were saying, I'm on the ground floor of some of the Augusta,
Mm-hmm.
if the goal is 1,000. Lee was also saying that I have such a large territory now
Yep.
because they're actually selling smaller territories. And so if I had avoided 6 months, I would have been short sighted in that fact that I would have had less territory.
Right. What
So
is your radius? Do you know?
yeah, I have a 5 mile radius, and I think that now they're selling anywhere between 2 and 4. It depends on the population.
Yeah. And how dense are your routes? Are you every day going to entire neighborhoods and you're planning
Mhm.
to make those more dense? Is that your plan?
Yeah, we definitely want to make them more dense. We have a lot of new construction around here, but also a lot of
Mm,
old homes. And so, like our geo, whatever, like you look on the USPS on who makes what in what neighborhood, it's really spread out. You may have a really bad neighborhood but a really good one in the middle,
mm-hmm.
or it's just really spread out. I mean, like it takes me about 30 to 35 minutes to get from one edge of my territory to the other because I live on the west side, and then if I get all the way to the east side, it could take 30 to 35 minutes depending on traffic. So once we get to an area, we're pretty much in an area. We're within a couple of minutes to maybe 7 minutes at the most from another property.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I'm excited for you and what's going to happen in the upcoming year. A little bit about you in your relationship with all the other franchises and in franchisees and in Augusta as a whole. How do you feel like you as a person has changed over this time, and have you grown in relationships with other people inside the organization? And how have you found that to be?
Yeah, so I don't know if I would necessarily say I've changed a whole lot as a person other than like mental clarity, and I've probably
Mm,
sharpened my sword, I guess is what
hmm.
it is. And now I focus on the things that matter. Like beforehand, it'd be like, what mower should I use? What truck should I use? Like just
Exactly.
the stuff that just doesn't freaking matter.
Yeah.
And just like, people come up to us, they're like, "Oh, you like Ford?" No, I just have 3 Fords. That's just how it is. They were the right price, the right mileage, whatever else, right?
Oh, I bet they don't want to hear that, do they?
No, because they're Chevy or Dodge or
Yep.
whatever else. But no, I talked to quite a few of the franchisees. I talked to Nick Reed
Hmm.
probably a couple times a month. I talked to Garrett Smith in Colorado. My sister lives out in Colorado, so whenever I was in Littleton, I met up with Garrett.
Sweet.
I talked to Brian Connor from time to time. He's kind of one of the original, like the first 25 or so.
Hmm.
So talking to him, and he has that $1 million plus business, so he just knows quite a bit.
Right.
And he
Right.
kind of came in struggling as
Yep.
well, like how I felt. And so
Hmm.
there's Hugo. He's next door to me. Actually,
Oh, sweet.
my parents actually live in the Newburgh territory, and so that's the only lawn that I take care of in Hugo's territory. And I'm just like, there's unfortunately I still have to take care of my parents' house, even though I don't want to.
I tell you.
I know, right? So, mom and dad, if you see this, I humbly do it for free. I agree. And
The right thing to do.
yep, they paid for my college. That's what my dad always tells me. I'm just paying them back.
Well, there you go. There you go.
But yeah, I talked to quite a bit of the franchisees and try to stay connected. I mean, having the Augusta Nation benefit people who know the business plan that you're on and can
Hmm.
give you advice that actually matters and not just like, hey, well, I think that, we do this for this treatment program or whatever else. Have you ever tried this? It's just like, nah, it doesn't really matter because if I just stay on track and keep doing what Augusta recommends, then that's
Yeah.
just it. I'll see success on the other end. And that's kind of like what I had to do backtrack last year. I just really had to focus on it, hone down on it, and just get it done.
So any input you get from other franchisees is a lot more focused because they know
Mhm.
what the big picture looks like for Augusta and for your business, I guess.
Right, exactly. Like me and and I talked to Dustin Biernick and Bryce, like several of the people I
Mm-hmm.
went to training with. I talked to Bryce or Dustin every week, and so just new lifelong friends and
Mm-hmm.
colleagues and whatnot through Augusta. And but like I was talking to Garrett, they have Christmas light training for Augusta
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that some of the franchisees host, and me and Garrett were just like, we kind of want to do it, but we kind of don't. What's that look like? And Garrett and I were like, well, if we just put that $10,000 that it costs to start
Mm-hmm.
Christmas lights, what if we put that into marketing for our fall cleanups and
Smart.
double down on our marketing? And he's like,
Yeah,
there's no reason we can't have a $50,000 a month on leaves just like they could for Christmas lights. And so
for
we're just
sure.
like, so I think that's what he and I are both going to do probably this year. I don't know about 10 grand, but
Yeah.
definitely double down at that time of year and just include more revenue of what we're
Mm-hmm.
already doing. So that way it
Okay.
doesn't add the new stress.
Yeah, I like that idea. I do have to admit though, when I went and heard the whole class on Christmas lights, of course,
Yeah.
I'm not too excited at the moment to stay in simple services. I'm like, yeah, we can do this and we can do it. And Mike's like, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah, I know because we were
Uh,
all at that training together, and I know
yep.
you're asking so many questions about like how could Command Center do this? That's what you poised every
Yes.
question with. How could Command Center do? How could we do this better? How could we measure this over the phone? And it was just like, man, it was just
And it
something else.
works. It worked
Yeah,
for
it works.
everyone that did it.
Yeah.
I loved it. So, your big picture goal, 5 years, 10 years, do you think about those goals? Are you trying not to think about those goals because it's too overwhelming? Where do you see yourself then?
Yeah, so I kind of tell my wife that we need to have strict 5-year goals and loose 1 year.
That's
So
good.
because every year or every 6 months or every time we hit a certain goal, we may have to readjust. We may hit it sooner. We may not hit it as soon. So I always tell her that we need to kind of figure it out. I mean, I could be on spreadsheets on the computer during our free time, and I think that that's fun to plan our future. And
Oh, man.
she doesn't like it. I remember at first it
I'm
was so
sure.
overwhelming for her when we got married, and she just cried, and I was like, "What did I say wrong?" She's like, "Nothing. It's just a lot." And I'm just
I
like, "I'm so
know.
sorry." And it's just who I who I wanted to be. So I think I when I joined, I really wanted to do multi-locational, and I still do. However, Lee recommended because I already have the territory. Like potentially later on, I could have a split territory, like an east,
True.
a west,
Hmm.
and then I don't know. He's like, I don't know how that would work. Like, do you have another franchise fee or not? I would just. It doesn't really matter.
Hmm.
On doing that, I could maybe
Right.
have expanded territory to have an east and a west, but then like
Hmm.
I could have instead of doing $1 million location on one, I could have an east and a west route. Each doing anywhere between 500 to eventually maybe that $1 million mark. It's just a little bit more easier to manage. And then if I have multiple people that are gun ho about being a manager, then I have two positions instead of
Hmm.
one. But I already have the real estate, and then I could kind of have a central hub of where they come. And so just because we have so many people in our territory, we have about a 250,000 people in our territory where a lot of people have like 40, 50, maybe
Hmm.
100,000 on a good one. And so we
Wow.
have a large territory, and Lee was just like, you could just split it. Like you already have the people. Even if I service 1%, that's 2,500 clients, and nobody in Augusta has 2,500 clients. I
No,
mean,
that
we do in
is
our database, but we don't
right.
service 2,500 customers a week. Like that would just be insane.
That would be incredibly awesome. I'd
So
love to I'd
I
love
think
to watch that.
splitting would probably be the best bet. Outside of
Yeah.
that, then me and my wife are like we like the Nashville area, we like the Indy area or something like that
Mhm.
later on in the next couple of years.
Okay, you mentioned about your wife, and when she came here with you, she was 100% supportive, experienced all that with you, saw you at the beginning. And this is something that a lot of families and guys are going to struggle with because it's so humble in the beginning and so hard. And then it clicks for the guy and
Yeah.
he just goes for it and he's successful. And like you said, it's like too much for her. I mean, you're probably laying in
Yeah.
bed with your laptop working on these things and she's getting really annoyed. Like she probably wants to take your laptop and throw it across the room. Like,
Ideally my
hello.
laptop in my office or on the couch. So I've never taken my laptop to bed, actually.
That's
I will
good.
do some stuff on my phone, like maybe respond to some emails, or she
Yeah.
hates it when I answer the phone and I'm in
Yes.
bed because she says I just talk really loud. And so she just doesn't like that.
So how does she feel a couple years in with everything that's going on? Does she resent it? Does she tolerate it, or is she in full support at this particular time in your business?
Yeah, I definitely think she's always been in full support all around. I think our first spring rush when it was getting really tight and I didn't know what to expect, and I'm just like, "Hey, I'm not gonna pay myself this month or the next 2 months. What can we cut out of the budget?" And that's whenever
Yeah,
she kinda cried
no,
and was just like,
no kidding.
Was this the right decision?" And just like And I was like, it's not that we can't pay ourselves. It's just, what can I do with that money and make the business better and then pay myself the dividends later? And she was just like, well, we can't do that. And so like, I, so we had to have 3 no-nos that we didn't touch.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted date night,
Mm-hmm.
which that's fair. She wanted some subscription. I can't remember. Maybe it was her Kindle.
Okay.
And then she wanted, we do an allowance where we each get like a certain amount of money every month, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like no argument money. You can spend whatever the heck you want on that money, and it doesn't matter what the other person spends it on. You could keep it, you could save it, you can invest it, you could buy useless crap to the other person, but they can't
Mm-hmm.
harp on you about it.
I love
And
it.
so I think doing some of those things were really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But that first April, whenever I was just like, man, we should cut down the budget, and I just had to double down on it. And she's like, was this the right decision? I was like, I think it's the right decision. It's just going to take time for this to come to fruition. So
Mm-hmm.
she's always been with me. And now she's like, hey, well, maybe Augusta can allow us to move to this area,
Mm-hmm.
and she loves the yellow because yellow is her favorite color.
Oh my word.
But she hates the yellow trucks in our driveway because we're
No
still in our
kidding.
driveway. We don't have a shop space, so we're still in our driveway. So she just hates how many of them there are.
Yes.
And
Taken over.
I know. And so yeah, she's very gun ho with it. She likes Kate and Allie,
Mm-hmm.
Bryce and Dustin. Those are really the 2 main wives that she had met, and I think it's really great that Augusta does like, hey, here's a class for the wives. Hey, here's
Mm-hmm.
for the partner. Here's how you can understand what your other person is going through. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
told her like a month ago, I was like, honestly, at the end of the day, I could just get like 5 or 10 minutes, just like put your hands on my shoulders, or just like while I'm sitting there on the computer, just like I would do anything in the world for you. Cause like at that moment, I just need something to just pull me back to reality. And
Yeah.
then everything else is okay. And so I think having those conversations, which I could very much well have those conversations, but she is not the person, like, she's just like a day at a time, I guess, type
Yeah.
person. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm thinking about 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month, 6 months. Like
Right.
I'm thinking about what we're going to be doing for our anniversary this year. And she necessarily isn't, or vice versa. Right. I could be thinking about nothing, and she wants to think about, hey, what are we going to do next year? I have no idea. I don't really care either. Just like
Yeah.
we
Maybe
just
that
have,
brings a good balance between
I,
the two of you.
I think it does. I think it really does.
Yeah, so that is a great point to start to wrap up on. And I would love to hear from you what you've been listening to, the kind of input you have, and do you listen throughout the day? Kind of the stuff that's had the biggest impact on you, maybe sermons, podcasts, YouTube.
Hmm.
Um, I'm sure you thought about this, and I'm sure you're doing something right now.
Hmm.
If you're in Augusta Nation, you're trying to get better in some way.
Right. Yeah. So entertainment wise podcasts, I listen to a lot of like Joe Rogan, or like the
Mm-hmm.
iced coffee hour, or I like the C suite, which Lee should put it on Spotify so I don't have to use my YouTube, but in
I'll
terms of
tell
like,
him.
I know, thank you, I appreciate it. But in terms of like business ones, I really like some financial ones. There's like the Money Guy, or
Mm-hmm.
Dave Ramsey has some pretty good stuff. I'm always listening to Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really like David Goggins or Jocko Willing, or
Mm-hmm.
I really think that extreme ownership is just hands down. I remember telling a guy the other day, because we were hiring him, I was like, if you break something, that's no big deal. But if you break something and don't tell me, it just came out of my mouth. I was like, I will fire you. I was like, it was just that extreme ownership, right?
Yep.
I was like, if you're 5 minutes late because you spent 5 minutes playing on your phone, it's not traffic's fault. It's your fault. And
Yep.
and he was just like, yeah, that's really true. And he didn't really think about it that much. And so,
And you probably didn't expect that reaction out of him, but I
no.
found people can take it when you say something that their parents never said to them, even about extreme ownership. They seem to be
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, that's a different way to look at things. Maybe I should own this.
Yeah. Well, both my parents were military. So
Oh man,
learning that book as well was just like a no brainer. And
for
so
sure.
they were really big on that. And, and, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, learning about like analysis paralysis, like just make a decision.
Hmm.
Mike said at one point, if you're 51% of the time correct, just make the decision and move on with it, which I think is probably something that he learned from the Bezos letters, that book.
Oh, maybe that was a great book.
Yeah, about level 1 and level 2 decision making,
Yeah.
and about how most decisions can be reversed almost immediately. And so just make a decision, live with it, see how it plays out, and change it from there, and just move on.
Another really impactful thing from that book I remember him talking about was that Bezos would pick 2 things in a day, and that was it. If I get
Oh yeah.
this done and this done, I don't care about anything else. And he said he found that very helpful too. Yeah, so you and I recommend that book. That's something that doesn't come up very often.
I think I'm gonna read it again. I really like the "You Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins. Whenever you're just
Yep.
feeling down for yourself, like you're just like,
Mhm.
I just don't feel like getting up today. David Goggins, he'll kick your butt. He'll kick
Yep.
you into shape.
I felt whiny one time and just felt like being a whiner, and I thought I
Yeah.
better listen to that book, and man, it snapped me right out of it.
I mean, that's how I feel. I also like the 10X rule with Grant
Yeah.
Cardone. Um, oh, one guy has never split the difference. He was an
Mhm.
FBI negotiator talking about hostage situations, about how to just, you know, psychologically
Mhm.
deal with situations, hard situations, or all of that. But honestly, a lot of the stuff at the end of the day, I think Augusta training like the highs and lows, like a lot of that stuff at the end of the day, it just doesn't really matter. So just deal with it and move on.
For sure.
In terms of quotes, I actually have mine written down for
Oh,
you.
good. Good, good. I wanna hear that.
Um, you said this one last year. It was "Each moment free from fear makes a man immortal" from Alexander the Great. I
Mhm.
think somebody at the local shop had that, and it's just talking. I think it just reifies like just making decisions will make you a better man later,
Mhm.
and usually better decisions will help you live longer or more prosperous. And whenever you wake up and you're just like, man, I'm just here to conquer the day. I think that's
Mhm.
the part of the immortality on Alexander the Great side, and just like you're ready to kill, steal, and destroy. Like let's just go.
Mhm. What's really interesting about that is Alexander was young, and the young man who took that quote at our local shop and put it on the board, he passed away right after
Mhm.
that, and we left that on the board for a long time. So
Right.
you should read it again.
Yeah.
So I mean, read it to us right now. I think it's a
Oh
good
yeah.
one for people to look up and write down.
Yeah, it's "Each moment free from fear makes a man immortal." Alexander the Great.
I love it. So, is there any last things you'd like to share to people that are young in business, just starting out, and it's come the journey that you have in the last several years? Is there anything you'd want to share? Now's your time.
I
Take
know,
the
right?
stage.
I've talked to probably 15 or 20 different people who want to join Augusta over the last year. Just very gun ho. I mean, I am just like anything and everything that makes Augusta Nation better or an individual better. And a lot of times, what I hear a lot of people, well, I just don't know. And I'm just like, it's analysis paralysis. Like, just make the decision. I tell every single one of them, yeah, sometimes it sucks and it's hard. And you have to get used to having command center and some of these other things. And yeah, maybe they'll make mistakes, but at the end of the day, I still wish I would have done it sooner. Like if I would have done this 2, 3, 4 years ago, whenever Mike started, like just think about where we could have been. So if you're thinking about it, you should probably do it as long as you have the right character, and you're gonna wish you would have done it sooner, because that's what I hear almost everybody from Augusta Nation say is, I wish I would have done it sooner.
Excellent. All right. So, with that note,
Yep,
we will split the day, and I hope you take on the day and have success. I'll make sure that I read those books too. Again, I love hearing where everybody's
absolutely.
at in their books. All right. Thank you for your time. You have a great day.
Yeah, thanks, Liz.
Thank you.
Bye.